So we want to get right to that new advisory, get to the latest information, bring in Fox Weather hurricane specialist Bryan Norcross for his input on the latest developments. Bryan, good morning. What a storm we have.
It is. Mother Nature never ceases to amaze us on what can happen when exactly the right conditions come together. Hurricanes can really spin up if they're not very big. If you think about it, there's not as much air to get moving if the core isn't very big, and that's what we see going on this morning. There is the core of the storm. It's very symmetric around the center. We're going to look at it close up in a second, but let's get the numbers. 145 mile an hour sustained winds. The hurricane hunters are flying through it right now. They measured about 160 miles per hour at their flight level. And then so nominally you take 10% off of that. That's where we end up with the 145 miles per hour moving west-northwest at 20. But you notice it's wobbling, and I bet this concerned some people in the islands this morning. It kind of made a bend back down a little bit south, but the net of all this is continuing up this way. When storms intensify, indeed, they will tend to wobble, and 935 millibars and continuing to drop. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that actually go down a little bit more as this continues on. Let's look at it close up here where you can really see the islands and you can see the eye. Look at that. It's just one of those pictures that you see of a hurricane in a book. This is what hurricanes look like. There's the core. It's really very, very small. If you look at the island of Puerto Rico, which you know isn't a huge island, it's a decent sized island, but I mean this is a really small hurricane. And the news is that the strongest winds are very tightly contained within that overall envelope. Now this storm is going to expand dramatically as we move forward in time, maybe 4 times to 5 times the size that it is right now eventually, but for now it's small, so it's staying well to the north here of these islands. But you do see here these bands. See this strong band of thunderstorms here, and then we're going to have another one back over here. So these are going to come through the islands, and they are going to know there's a hurricane out there. Take a look here when we look at the radar, where it's in radar range out of San Juan now. Now the radar is right about there in Puerto Rico on top of the mountain, so it's a long ride for the beam all the way out to the hurricane. So it's only seeing the very tops of it. That's why it doesn't look very strong out there. Same thing over here over the northern Leeward Islands. You see all these yellows and oranges popping up here. Well, what that tells you is they have to be super high in the atmosphere in order for the beam coming all the way from Puerto Rico to see them. So when those go over, there are real downpours going on these islands, and they have left up the tropical storm watch for a couple of these islands in here. The local governments there make that decision, or the controlling governments there make that decision. No watches for any kind of wind on the islands, but they are going to get downpours starting early today coming this way. But the bigger effect on the islands is going to be when this tail here that wraps up it comes over. So as the storm goes that way, this tail is coming this way too. It'll come through the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. That'll be tonight and tomorrow. So they have flood watches and so forth in effect. Here you can see on the widest view of the radar, there's a tail out here. You just can't see it very well because it's so far from the radar, but it's going to take a good while for all this to clear. All weekend long, this is going to affect the islands, Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, and the various other Caribbean islands. All right, why don't they have tropical storm watches up for the Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands? You might wonder, with a Category 4 hurricane that close. Well, when they do the calculation of the wind, where are the strongest winds? This up here is where the strongest winds are. They're mostly north of the storm. And you see the odds of having tropical storm force winds in Puerto Rico are down in the 5 to 10% range. So they don't put up a watch for very low odds. But there will be gusts with those downpours. So you're going to know there's a big storm out there, but not the continuous wind that they put up watches for. All right, let's look farther ahead now. And boy, are we lucky. I don't know, a whole lot of lucky people have gotten together here. And this thing is going to go up between the U.S. and Bermuda. Now, Obviously, in Bermuda, it's closer. They are going to have to watch it. They're also on the stronger side of the storm. But look at this. They've got up to 150. Now, slowly weakening, but growing in size. Remember, the cone is not about the size of the storm. It's about where the center is. As you go farther in time, there's more uncertainty. But this is just the center point. The storm will get much larger in size as it goes. So you have a very large hurricane out in here. So it'll be likely that Bermuda's going to feel the effects. Whether they get the worst of it, it would have to go way to the right side of the cone for that to happen. Here you go, the close-up look, and you can see the winds coming down 120, 110. But what's happening here is that the energy is being spread out into a bigger storm. Yes, the top winds are not as high, but this is really moving water. This is putting a tremendous amount of energy over a large area in the ocean. This entire part of the western Atlantic here is going to be disrupted by this storm. And how certain are we of this, that this is not going to hang a left and affect the East Coast? Well, this is our uncertainty conglomeration of models. The L's here are the European and the American GFS model, give you the distribution of where they think the uncertainty is. Notice it's right where the cone is, and those two X's there, those are the two AI models, the European AI model and the Google DeepMind AI model. So we'll just track them as well as we track everything else. All right, here we go forward in time. Look up here in the upper left, there's Wednesday morning. So that started Tuesday morning, Wednesday morning. You see, now almost all of this is in the cone. The cone is describing the uncertainty very well for this storm. So Bermuda has to watch. Notice no concern for the East Coast. One little one on the side here, but that's like a very small, tiny percentage, and we discount that. Notice it bends, and then by Friday it's on moving out to sea. So this is just, we are so fortunate. This is like splitting the uprights here between North Carolina and Bermuda. But as I said, effects on the entire western Atlantic, including the east coast of the U.S. Here we are. We're using this measurement of wave heights. Now, when we talk about waves, these are not crashing waves on the coast. These are waves out in the ocean. You know, if you're in a cruise ship or any kind of ship, you know the waves out there. All right, how high are those waves? Well, the model estimates that. There's where the core is down here. And so watch as we go forward in time. Here we are Tuesday morning, starting to get that energy on the southeast coast, including North Florida down to about Palm Beach County, just beginning Tuesday morning. And then when we get to Wednesday morning, now this is when we're going to have the maximum danger along the coast. Very large waves, eroding waves, strong currents, rip currents. Boating will not be recommended. Certainly beach going will be dangerous. From Cape Hatteras south, this will be on Wednesday. And there you can see, you can kind of make out that this got bigger. Even though the winds are getting lower, the amount of energy going into the ocean increases as the storm gets larger. All right, going forward in time, here we are Thursday morning. Now the energy is coming up into the northern part of Cape Hatteras, the Delmarva, the Jersey Shore, on up to Long Island and southern New England. So Thursday is going to be the peak day there. You'll notice it, I think, on Wednesday, but Thursday will be the peak day. And then we go forward in time, and you notice it lets up pretty quickly because now the energy is being deflected, well, to Atlantic Canada late in the week. Still, I think there'll be some water rise by Friday, but by the weekend, the beaches should be fine, boating should be fine, and things will be settling down. So the main effect on most of the coast, including the Bahamas, by the way, is going to be exactly this. It's going to be this energy, tremendous energy in the ocean and pushing into waterways, and beach and boating activities are going to be restricted because they will be dangerous when the peak of this comes on by. Guys?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're very lucky that this stays offshore. But, Bryan, you know, regardless of that, the wave energy is just going to be immense up and down the coast. I wanted to get your thoughts on this because I feel like Erin has consistently held on the south side of the forecast line, right? Do you think we're going to see this storm eventually fall closer to the consensus as we look throughout perhaps the end of the day today, kind of work that northwesterly turn?
Well, I think there's very, very high confidence that the storm is not going to make direct landfall on land. It will move one side or the other of the cone because it's not perfectly symmetric. It's not a perfect, circle around a point. It always, the thunderstorm develops on this side and that kind of tugs it one way or the other way. So it's going to tend to wobble. And sometimes just because the storm is intensifying faster than the computer forecasts indicated, the intensity affects the track. So to some degree. So I wouldn't be surprised to see it maneuver to one side or the other of the track as the intensity changes, different than the computer predictions. But that's why we put that uncertainty in there. That's just intrinsic uncertainty based on everything we know and based on the way the computer forecasts have performed over the last 5 years. That's what the width of the cone is based on. So it's kind of built-in uncertainty.
And Bryan, it seems like this is a really bottom-heavy storm. This is Michael, by the way, where it looks like a lot of that convection is south of the center. So it looks like the Lesser Antilles, perhaps even Puerto Rico eventually getting in on this action. Are they going to see more demonstrative effects? And then the other part is, do you think that this could become and achieve Category 5 status?
Well, let me answer the second one first. Yes, I think this could become a Category 5. It's small enough. It usually takes a relatively small storm to reach Category 5. Now, the analysis of the various computer models is that the upper level winds are not going to be super pristine like they are right now. They're going to become a little bit more hostile. Not enough to tear it apart or anything, but just a little bit more. That might limit it. And this is why forecasting the difference between a Category 4 and a Category 5 is we don't have really the technology to do that with any certainty. As far as where the winds are, we do see these strong bands of winds on the southern side of the storm, but those are squalls and gusts. When the hurricane hunters fly through it, the strong winds are mostly on the north side and then just a little bit on the south side. As with all hurricanes moving 20 miles an hour, remember 20 miles an hour of that 145 is related to the forward speed of the storm. Mm-hmm. And so on the left side, that forward speed is actually detracting from the winds. So the storm is, from a wind standpoint, the core is really north side heavy. But those tails, that tail that sticks down, the winds are going to be very gusty in there, and they can be damaging. They can cause power outages and so forth, winds gusting up to 40, 50 miles per hour with those squalls. But they're more passing squalls than they are sustained winds from the core of the storm.
Yeah, just an incredible storm to look at, though, with the tight concentric eye. I mean, what a look. And Bryan, we're going to continue to see it strengthen throughout the day today. We appreciate the update and your insight. We'll be following along with Erin throughout the morning.
Yes, absolutely. Incredible to see.